Welcome to Have You Read It, the channel where we bring books to life, one summary at a time. Today we're diving into Sune Engel Rasmussen's powerful book, 20 Years. This isn't just another book about the war in Afghanistan. It's an intimate look at the lives of ordinary Afghans caught in extraordinary circumstances. It's the story of Afghanistan's Generation 9/11, those who came of age during America's longest war, and how their lives were irrevocably shaped by it. The book focuses on two central characters, Zara and Omari. Their contrasting experiences paint a vivid picture of the deep divisions that have fractured Afghan society since 2001. Zara, a Hazara woman, represents those who, at least initially, benefited from the intervention, finding new opportunities for education and personal freedom. Omari, a Pashtun man who joined the Taliban at 14, embodies those who saw the U.S. presence as an occupation and fought back. The book opens with a prologue that sets the stage. Rasmussen describes the 2016 attack on the American University in Kabul, a chilling reminder of the war's enduring impact on a generation that barely remembered a time before it. This attack is a turning point for Rasmussen, highlighting the tragic irony of young Afghans turning on each other, their futures poisoned by a war they inherited. Zara's story begins in Iran, where her family fled during the Soviet-Afghan War. Growing up as a refugee, she longed for a homeland she had never known, finding solace in books and dreaming of a better future. After the U.S. intervention, she returned to Afghanistan with her husband and children, only to find a different kind of war awaiting her, a personal battle against the conservative norms of her society and the abuse of her opium-addicted husband. Fahim's story is one of ambition and opportunity. A young man from Kabul, he witnessed the Taliban's fall and the influx of foreign aid that followed. He seized the moment, leveraging his skills as a translator for coalition forces to build a business empire, eventually becoming a media mogul. His story represents the dizzying rise of a new Afghan elite, profiting from the war economy. Omari's story begins in the rural Wardak province, a Taliban stronghold. He recounts his childhood, shaped by his father's stories of jihad against the Soviets and a growing resentment of the Americans. He joined the Taliban at a young age, driven by a sense of religious duty and a desire to fight foreign occupiers. He describes his training in Pakistan and his experiences on the battlefield, where he witnessed firsthand the brutality of the war. Back to Zara. Her return to Afghanistan was not the fresh start she had hoped for. She faced hardship, discrimination, and escalating domestic violence. Her husband's addiction spiraled out of control, culminating in a terrifying incident where he attempted to burn down their house with her and their children inside. This event led to her divorce and a desperate escape to Kabul with her children, where she sought refuge and a new beginning. Parasto's story offers a different perspective on the challenges faced by Afghan women. Growing up in a relatively liberal family, she excelled in school and dreamed of a career in international relations. She faced resistance from conservative relatives who believed a woman's place was in the home, but she persisted, eventually finding work in President Ghani's administration. Her story highlights the progress made by some Afghan women during the war, even as the broader fight for equality remained an uphill battle. Omari's story continues with his experiences in a Taliban training camp in Pakistan, where he prepared to become a suicide bomber. He was eventually pulled out of the camp by his father, but his commitment to the cause remained. He describes his participation in ambushes against coalition forces and his growing disillusionment with the war, particularly with the Taliban's targeting of civilians. Zara's life in Kabul was marked by resilience and a growing sense of purpose. She found work with a theater group, sharing her story and those of other Afghan women through performances that challenged traditional norms. She traveled the country, collecting stories of war and abuse, and eventually wrote a book that became a bestseller, giving voice to the silenced experiences of Afghan women. Fahim's story takes a darker turn as the war escalates. His media outlets become targets of Taliban attacks, highlighting the risks faced by those promoting free speech and challenging extremist ideologies. His story reflects the broader struggle for a more open and democratic Afghanistan, even as that dream came under increasing threat. Omari's perspective on the war continues to evolve. He describes his struggles with PTSD and his growing discomfort with the Taliban's tactics, particularly the targeting of civilians and the ban on girls' education. He expresses a desire for peace and a more inclusive Afghanistan, even as he remains committed to the Taliban cause. Mads, a Danish soldier, offers a glimpse into the experiences of foreign forces in Afghanistan. He describes his multiple tours of duty, the challenges of working with Afghan partners, and the tragic incident where he witnessed the death of a U.S. general in an insider attack. His story highlights the complex dynamics of the war and the risks faced by both Afghan and foreign forces. Alex's story provides a rare glimpse into the challenges faced by LGBTQ individuals in Afghanistan. He describes his struggles with family pressure to marry, the risks of being gay in a conservative society, and his dreams of creating a safe space for the LGBTQ community. His story sheds light on a marginalized group often overlooked in narratives about the war. In the final part of the book, the narrative shifts to the chaotic fall of Kabul in 2021. Zara Fahim Ahmad, a former interpreter for U.S. forces, and Parasto describe their experiences during the Taliban takeover, their fears for the future, and their desperate attempts to flee the country. Omari offers a different perspective, describing his participation in the Taliban's entry into Kabul and his hopes for a more peaceful and just Afghanistan under the new regime. The book concludes with a sobering assessment of the Taliban's return to power and its impact on Afghan society, particularly on women. Zara, now a refugee in the United States, reflects on her journey and her hopes for her children's future. Parasto, still in Afghanistan, describes her efforts to create underground schools for girls, defying the Taliban's ban on female education. Omari expresses his disillusionment with the new regime and its failure to address the country's economic crisis. Fahim, also in exile, laments the loss of everything he built and the collapse of the American dream in Afghanistan. Ahmad's story is a poignant reminder of the human cost of the war. He describes his fears for his family's safety and his desperate attempts to obtain a visa to the United States, where he hopes to find refuge. His story highlights the plight of thousands of Afghans who worked with coalition forces and now face an uncertain future under Taliban rule. The book's main takeaway is that the 20-year war in Afghanistan was a tragedy for all involved. The U.S. intervention, while initially bringing some positive changes, ultimately failed to create a stable and democratic Afghanistan. The withdrawal of foreign forces left the country vulnerable to a Taliban resurgence, and the new regime, while promising a more inclusive and just society, quickly imposed harsh restrictions, particularly on women. The future of Afghanistan remains uncertain, but the resilience and determination of its people offer a glimmer of hope. Thanks for watching. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button so you never miss our next book dive.